What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve podcast, number one real estate investing podcast in the whole wide world. I'm Jason from Harmony Bankers, sitting across from me, Ian from Equity Warehouse. If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. If you are a frequent viewer or a follower or listener, if you're listening to this on iTunes, if you're watching this on YouTube or another channel, welcome back. Promise you we're going to give you some undivided attention here probably for the next hour. Got a really good guest that I'm super excited to interview and talk about that we'll introduce in a second. We're going to be talking about self-storage investing. And the funny thing related to this topic is I probably got familiarized with this topic maybe about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, mostly through Ian. A lot of my knowledge that I have related to self-storage, we've lent on self-storage. We've been limited partners on self-storage. So we own quite a bit of facilities as well. And most of my knowledge all came from Ian. And I feel like all of Ian's knowledge came from Mike, who we're going to introduce to you in a second. So I'm excited about this because I can go right to the source if I have any questions related to this topic. And I think a lot of folks that are tuning in and listening or watching are really going to get a lot of takeaways from what Mike has to offer today.
Yeah, I got a nice beard. Mike's got beautiful hair. But when we both met each other, I don't think I had a beautiful beard and he didn't have beautiful hair. We met out in Charlotte. We both have come on a long journey, both on a personal and a business life. And it's grown more to than just transactional. It's become a friendship. But before we get into all that, guys, if you get any value out of this episode or any past episodes, feel free to share them. This is how we spread the good word. If somebody didn't tell me about Mike, there is no way that I would ever be where I am today. And if Jason never promoted any of his stuff, we would never be friends either. So if you guys get any value, please feel free to share this show or like or review us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is how we keep this thing going. So
one more housekeeping thing real quick. So I'm going to put a link to hop on with us live. If you have any questions, you can obviously do so in Facebook or YouTube or any way that you're watching this. If you're watching this live, it will be recorded obviously as well. But we're going to post a link in the comments. So if you have a question for Mike as we're going through this, feel free to click on that link and you'll be put back in the waiting room and then we'll bring you up. And make sure your mic and camera's on. We'll bring you up and you can ask your question live.
It's actually a big joke. Mike's not here. No, seriously, here's Mike Wagner, all the way up there in cold ass Rochester, New York. But the good news is he has that warm Equity Warehouse shirt on, sweatshirt on. So Mike, how's it going? Introduce yourself, which you probably don't need an introduction, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, first, guys, thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. Jason, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, my name's Mike Wagner. I do live up, our good friend Terry Royce describes it as damn near Canada. Or the coldest part of the tundra. But it's a great place to live. So great that my wife, Melanie, and our 3 kids spend at least half the year here every year. We spend the other 4, 5, 6 months a year, depending on the year, traveling around the country to nicer, warmer climates. And the only reason we can do that is because of storage. And that's kind of why I'm so passionate about sharing what we've learned along the way with other people. And I love nothing more than watching other people succeed in this industry. And so I appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity and sharing your platform to spread the word a bit.
Yeah. And if it wasn't for you, your event, if it wasn't for you sharing, if it wasn't for Terry and a few other people talking about what you were doing, there's no way in hell we would own 700,000 square feet today. Sure, we have different investment theses. We invest on different type of assets, but in the end, it really comes down to core value, core business. I mean, your first event, I left out of there, jumped on a plane, went and saw a self-storage facility and locked it up, right? Like there's no way I would have done that without what you're providing. And I think we get lost a lot of times, or I do anyway, because you always say, hey, when you're speaking to people, can you dumb it down because you talk too fast? But we want to go all the way back to like self-storage 101. We don't need to go back to like 101 to your first deal, but like, let's just talk self-storage 101. Like, market's a little crazy now, intrinsically what we're seeing and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the place to start is probably right where you pointed to, and that's the market itself, right? Like storage has been a sexy asset for as long as I've been in it. So we're talking over a decade now. And it's been a seller's market for the last 5 years, like a red hot sellers market. So it was tough to break into the industry, and not impossible. Obviously, we've had our company teaching people how to do this. It's been up and running for the last, call it 3.5, 4 years, and we've had no shortage of success amongst our students. But it has been in some ways an uphill battle, just because of um, how excited the world was about storage itself. And the cool part is, I think we're in the process of seeing that change. I actually think it's already changed. And now we're just waiting for the sellers to realize it. Like, if you ask me, hey, is this a seller's market, a buyer's market? I'm going to tell you, for the first time in a decade, we're actually, all the conditions are ripe for us to be back into a buyer's market. And we have to be, admittedly, a little bit patient, because the sellers, though it's true we're in a buyer's market, interest rates are going up. Some of the excitement around storage, some of the COVID demand that we saw is evaporating a little bit. And so sellers are becoming more motivated, and they're only going to become more motivated over the next, I would say, 12 to 36 months. And so all that to say, the opportunity to get into this industry over the next 12 months is probably as good, if not better, than it's been in the last decade.
So most folks that I know that are in storage, either part-time or full-time now, came from the single-family rental space. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure you might have as well, or the single-family fix and flip space or rental space. Like, why do you think that's kind of the next transition up from single-family is into self-storage? Like, what's very appealing to everybody that they've kind of, like Ian, for instance, owned a few hundred rental properties, and he's like, I'm out of this. I'm all in on storage.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think the bottom line is that it's the same. The fundamentals are the same, right? If you think about whether it's a single family house, a small 2 to 4 unit multifamily, or a large commercial multifamily complex, or any other real estate, the fundamentals are the same. We're looking to buy and own and operate the real estate at a cost that is less than we can command from the market in exchange for them using the real estate that we own, right? So whether it's a single family house or storage, the bottom line is, if we can rent it out for more than our cost to own and operate, there's profit there. Now, the reason, and a direct answer to your question, is that people move from single family into storage and oftentimes never look back, is because of the underlying financial fundamentals. So the income to expense ratio in self-storage, industry standard, is typically about 33%, which means for every dollar in rent that we bring in, we spend 33 cents on operating the facility. Now, that doesn't include debt service, but it includes every other expense. And so if you buy it for cash, only 33 cents of each dollar is spent on operations. The other 66 cents is available for you to keep. Obviously, if you have debt involved, that 67 cents that's left over, you would pay debt and then keep whatever left over as your profit. In the single family or multifamily residential real estate world, that industry standard is typically 50 to 55 cents per dollar. And so in storage, we've got 20 to 25 cents of extra margin that I always say to my new students, you can screw up with that and you'll still be ahead of the game when compared to doing residential real estate.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, sorry, we were working on some stuff here, trying to bring some people in the back room. We got some questions coming up. We'll get to all of them here in a second. But I think another way to look at it is, I spend half the year paying my expenses, and we spent in residential or commercial or multifamily. We spend half the year paying our bills. We spend the other half of the year trying to make money. And then somewhere in between, pray to God, nothing goes wrong and we end up with it, right? Versus in storage, you're spending 2/3 of the year making money and only 1/3 of the year covering your expenses. And hopefully, if you do it right, not paying the government and everything there in between. Now, there's some other operational, we're talking about expenses. We're kind of diving right into it. And you talked about COVID demand. I think COVID exposed a few things of why storage is potentially better. Some of it for lien laws, some of it for transactional, being able to rent online. Do you want to talk some more of that and how much that's going to continue to stay here in the future, past, post-COVID? error. See, it kills me talking about COVID, right?
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm with you 100%. You know that, man. And there's really two things to this conversation, though. There's the consumer side. So that was the demand for storage itself, right? There was a very pronounced increase in demand, and there has been an increasing demand for storage, the product, right? Americans, when the economy's good, like it's been for the last many years, they buy a bunch of crap and then need a place to put it. And a lot of the, let's call it collateral damage of COVID, created an even more pronounced demand for storage itself. Now, some of that is starting to wane and go away. But I think what you're pointing to, Ian, is the other side of the equation, which is the demand, the investment demand for storage. So that is when COVID hit, all of a sudden, every landlord in the country was basically by law disallowed to run their business in a way that would make them money, right? If their tenants stopped paying them rent, they weren't allowed to evict, which is crazy, right? And then businesses were shuttered and shut down. The need for office space was decreased. And so this showed all of the institutional money, the big, deep pockets of the world, the vulnerabilities that have always existed in those particular asset classes, be it multifamily, retail, office space. And all of that money ran into the storage sector. Now, of course, it ran for the big facilities, which are not the kind that I personally invest in. But there's a trickle-down effect. If more money comes in at the top level, the folks that used to play at the top level need to drop down to the second tier, and the second tier drops down to the third. And before you know it, the whole industry has been impacted by this inflow of capital interest into the asset class. And that's what we saw. I joke with people and say, listen, storage made me rich, and I'm going to take credit for half of it, right? Like, I've got some strategies. I've got some risk mitigation strategies, some operation strategies, all these things that allow me to make money in storage. But over the last decade, because it was a seller's market for so long and the market was just so hot, we doubled our projections in many instances where we thought we'd make $750,000 or so on a deal over the course of 2 or 3 years. We ended up making $1 million or $1.5 million on that deal simply because of the economic tailwinds. And a lot of that was due to what we saw at the start of COVID. And then obviously, I think just because COVID's gone doesn't change the fact that storage proved to be resilient. The government couldn't interfere with the operations that we were doing. We were already remotely managing. And so they couldn't really shut us down because we didn't have contact with our customers. And, that all of that, I think is it maybe shines a light on some of the intrinsic advantages that storage has. Ian, you touched on one of them being the fact that we're not dealing with habitational real estate. So we don't deal with evictions. And so one, the government can't interfere with them, but two, it's not a 90, 120 day multi-$1,000 expense for us to reclaim our asset if the customer stops paying, right? If a landlord stops getting paid, he has to go through eviction and it takes months and thousands of dollars to happen. In storage, it takes us a give or take 60 to 90 days. And we're selling the person's goods, reclaiming our asset to rent out to the market, and oftentimes collecting money at auction for to make up for some of the lost rent.
So, I think we're going to get to some potential deal finding strategies, maybe how capital differs in this space compared to what folks in the single family rental space or multifamily might be used to. But when we talk about, or when you guys talk about self-storage in general, the facilities, like where are some of these facilities located? What's the size of the facilities? Are we talking about these huge storage facilities that you see in major areas? Are you talking about, little mom and pop facilities kind of on the side of the road? Are they, 5,000 square feet? Or are they 500,000 square feet? I mean, the word storage, I think in general is a very broad term. Mm-hmm. So in your mind, like, how does the formula that I guess you teach and the formula that you execute on, like where are those types of, what's the avatar, I guess, for one of those types of facilities? Sure.
It's a great question. And I want to be very clear that like my chosen strategy is not necessarily the best strategy for everybody, right? Ian has is perfect proof of that, right? He's playing a bigger game than me, and that's the best path for him given his objectives, risk tolerances, and resources. I've got my own set, and the biggest thing I always say is, and I'm happy to answer your question directly, but most importantly is to say that each person needs to take an inventory of their objectives. What are your goals? What resources do you have? And that includes money, of course. But a lot of folks can get started with no money down. They're just not going to do it on an $8 million property. If you're getting into a no money down property, it's probably going to be, $500K or less, maybe $1 million or less. And so all of those things are going to determine each person's individual buy box. That being said, my take is I am a very low volume, high margin investor. And so I've done less deals in my 11 years than Ian's done in the last year. And that's by design. And it's not to say my way is right or better for anybody other than me. Ian's way is better for him and mine is better for me. And that's what we want our students to understand and deploy a strategy that's going to best meet their objectives in the fastest way possible. But generally speaking, I'm a mom and pop investor. I'm looking for properties in secondary and tertiary markets, anywhere from, when I started out, my first facility was 10,000 square feet. That's probably too small to get me excited these days, simply because I'm in a different spot than I was back then. But for somebody getting started, I think 10 to 15,000 square feet is as small as you would want to go in most circumstances. And that's simply because that's the size you have to be at in order to start to really tap into the economies of scale and get that income to expense ratio of 33% down to that point. If you buy a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot facility, Jason, you might still be paying 40, 45, even 50% expense ratio because you just don't have critical mass yet. And then we go all the way up to, my most recent project is currently 50,000 square feet with an opportunity to add another 20 or 25,000 depending on demand. So it depends where you are on your journey and what you're trying to accomplish, as well as the resources you have to deploy.
Yeah, and I would say, just to follow up on that is there is different investment theses, and you'll find out in this business there's climate control, there's non-climate control, there's outdoor storage, there's everything in between all over this industry. And something that I think you do a very good job of is being able to get people to visualize what they actually want, right? Like it's not just about storage. Mike's probably laughing because I'm actually talking about life and vision. But the point is you can invest in anything in between and try to figure out ultimately what you want to invest in. And for us, it worked out as we like bigger markets. I can't, when I look at it, I'm like, oh man, I can't go to a small market. I can't imagine going to middle of nowhere, New York, or middle of nowhere, South Carolina, wherever it might be. I like seeing people, but that also comes from my single family background of operating inside of metropolitan cities. And that's just what ultimately we're used to.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so another one to throw at you, and for the most part, I kind of know the answer to this, but I think from somebody that, if this title's true to its word of self-storage investing 101, I think it's something that is important for folks that are a little bit newer to understand. And again, this is broad, and I understand that not all units or not all facilities are going to be the same, but typically, like, talk about like average cost per square footage, how much occupancy you prefer to begin with. Do these things cash flow from day one? Are they all value adds? And again, this is going to differ, but I guess for you, Mike, I know your model might be a little bit different from Ian's at this point, but what's kind of average cost per square footage? I don't know. I don't even know what questions to ask for.
Like what they can expect, like on a first deal? Is that what you're trying to
do? Just to expect on a first deal, just to be like, if someone gets a deal presented to them from a broker or wholesaler or whatever, that they know it's not garbage immediately, or it's something like, hey, this is worth entertaining.
Yeah. So a couple of rules of thumb that I run by. And again, it's hard to talk about in absolutes, price per square foot, because it all depends on rent. If the rent is double in a market versus in a different market, you can pay twice per square foot and the investment is equally as viable, right? But in the secondary and tertiary markets that I operate in, I've found that myself and my students are usually spending somewhere between $20 and $40 a square foot, give or take, and take it with a grain of salt, because the smart Alec Terry, who's posting comments about me and Ian talking too much, has spent 55 or 60 on a facility and done really, really, really well with it. Like you'd be an idiot to have passed this one up. And if he listened to me saying, hey, never spend more than $40 a square foot, it's not a deal, he would have missed that opportunity. And so I want to be very clear that that's not what I'm saying here. It's just giving you a general example. One way that you can kind of isolate and compare a property in market A and market B, where they have very different rental rates, is to use what we call the gross rent multiplier. And so a gross rent multiplier in the 5 range, anywhere from 4 to 6, I start to get pretty excited. So that means if I can buy a property for, say, $40 a square foot, if that thing is going to rent out for $8 per square foot per year, I can divide 40 by 8 and come up with a gross rent multiplier of 5. That's a real rough sniff test to say, hey, there may be some potential here. Now, on the flip side, if the rent is still $8 a square foot, but they're trying to charge me $80 a square foot to buy the place, that's a gross rent multiplier of 10. And I'm going to look at that and go, I'm not even interested in turning the page to page 2 of this offering memorandum.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people need to take the time and really understand the numbers and get into it. And that's what makes sometimes people get scared off by storage. They think storage is a much more complex underwriting thing than it needs to be. There is a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more things to calculate. There's a lot more revenue streams and a whole bunch of different things. But in the end, it is real estate. That's all it is. Someone is renting a unit. And we all know how to do this in the single family world. So I think you just brought up some really good points. Is it's hard for anyone to just go out here and underwrite any deal and be like, this is the exact metric that you have to use in every single deal, because markets all across the country change every single day. So, and you know, a lot of stuff's changing. You know, Jason was trying to kind of pin it down to a price per foot, and that's how a lot of us got started. Things are always moving. The more evolved you become in this business, the more you find different ways to underwrite it. Oh, you know, I remember you talked about GRM and all kinds of crazy shit. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. If I buy it for less than replacement cost, I'm in. But some things that move those prices that you can't always use at is debt and financing. In today's market, what are you seeing with owners being willing to finance? How are people still getting cash to do deals? How do people look at financing inside of even underwriting these deals?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the opportunity for seller financing it's always one we pursue regardless of the other economic conditions. Now, how much value we ascribe to that seller financing is in direct relation to the greater economic factors, interest rates, and all of that stuff, obviously. I think the opportunities for seller financing are going to increase significantly over the next 12 to 24 months, just as conventional banking gets a little more expensive. The sophisticated and savvy investor, the one who gets smart on how to position seller financing as not a favor to me as the buyer, right? But as an opportunity for you, the seller, to get a little more money than you otherwise could for your property, save a boatload on taxes, right? And we get into the weeds teaching people like these are the benefits that you want to teach the seller about, so that they're excited, not just quote unquote willing to do seller financing, but they're excited about the idea, because it really is a win-win situation. You know, there's still loans are still happening. Interest rates are just higher. And so to your point, Ian, you've got to really understand how the underwriting works. And like you said, it's not different than any other real estate asset class in that it's income minus expenses. And whatever's left over is what you can afford to spend on debt service and then put the rest in your pocket. It's really that simple. It's just a matter of really the art of it comes down to figuring out, and some of this is admittedly guessing, right? I always tell my students, I don't care what you put in the spreadsheet because I know you're going to be wrong. My goal is I want you to be wrong high on some of them and wrong low on some of them, because we're going to teach you how to make the right educated guesses based on the assumptions and projections that we're going to put in there. But the bottom line is none of us have a crystal ball. And so when we buy, I think the secret sauce is buying in such a way that we mitigate risk. I like to use the analogy of showing up at the poker table, knowing the worst case scenario is I leave with my money and maybe wasted a couple hours, or in the case of a storage deal, maybe a couple months, but I'm not going bankrupt, and I'm not risking my family's lifestyle and food on their table for any storage deal.
And if the seller financing is a new concept for you, maybe you're in the residential fix and flip or rental game. I was actually very surprised how common it was, not only in all commercial stuff, but in self-storage in particularly. And I mean, I've looked at a lot of self-storage deals over the last 2 years, and the majority of them have some sort of component. Sometimes it's owner financing the whole thing. Sometimes it's a first mortgage. Sometimes just take back financing as a second mortgage behind their bank or lender, however they have it set up. So it's definitely a common way to do it. And coming from my personal self, the residential side as well, like, not that we didn't try to get seller financing, but a lot of those deals, those situations, there just wasn't room for them to do so. And on deals like this, I feel like there is. Another interesting fact that, and I don't know if these stats are still accurate, but I'm guessing they're similar, that I heard probably from one of you at one point, was the difference between self-storage and multifamily is, in the multifamily world, 80% of those facilities are owned by, institutional sources, corporate owners, things like that. And only 20% are still like mom and pop operations. But on self-storage, that's flip-flopped, where 80% of these self-storage facilities from all over the country are still mom and pop, underutilized stores or facilities that have a lot of upside potential. So, I think there's kind of, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong about this, there's kind of like never-ending supply into the near future to find an opportunity that best fits you. And I've seen a lot of these deals, and they, if you're willing to kind of, pull your sleeves up and get your hands dirty a little bit as an operator, there's good opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you nailed it. Those were the numbers, almost, an exact flip-flop, the 80-20. It's not quite so dramatic right now. I don't know the most up-to-date number, but I'm going to say it's probably closer to 70-30 instead of the 80-20 that it was several years ago, because we are seeing consolidation in the market, which actually compounds the opportunity that we have, because and I talked about before, as the money comes in from other asset classes, that drives up the price of storage relative to all other asset classes. And the consolidation where these big buyers are coming in, and more and more big buyers are owning more and more of the inventory throughout the country, that also drives prices up. And it's an opportunity, especially for guys like Ian, who have these big regional portfolios, to liquidate to somebody who can pay and will pay absolute top dollar for properties, right? Whereas my strategy, we're buying from mom and pops and we're selling up a tier or two, which we still get the benefit, but maybe not quite as profound as the one that Ian will get, because he's got, that bigger footprint that attracts the biggest of buyers who are actively looking to consolidate the industry.
Gotcha. There also, real quick, if you want to hop on live, there's a link in the comments. It's a StreamYard link. There's 3 people in the back room right now, but it says your devices aren't connected, so I can't add you to the into this stream. But if you connect your devices, your webcam and your audio, or just your audio, if you want to not be on video, you can hop in.
Yeah. So Mike, and we're trying to get Mr. Nick P on here because we know who that is, our favorite New Mexico friend. But what are you seeing right now, right? Like, if we're going back 101, like, we can talk underwriting, we can talk all this shit, but like, where are the deals coming from, man? Because like, I got my wheelhouse of where to find guys, where to find deals and guys. You never know. Dark alley, late night, couple drinks after a storage rebellion event. Never know what's gonna happen. But more importantly, with that being said, it's my question, I guess, is where are people finding opportunities right now? Right, direct mail was hot a few years ago. I could just, we could jump on MLS, CoStar, whatever, go find deals immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you or your students or anybody in your network finding deals today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, you're right. Like in my early days, most of my first, I don't know, half of my first several properties came right off listed properties, and they were home runs. Like we're talking about $400,000 purchases that were sold for 1.8 million, a few years later. Like there were real deals to be listed. And I'm not saying there are none, but they're definitely fewer and farther between. And the direct answer to your question, Ian, is the best success that myself and my students are having finding deals is 100% direct to seller. So that's going to the seller directly. This is probably more true mom and pop than it is for larger properties, and I shouldn't even say larger because there are many mom and pop properties that are quite large. You're not likely going to buy from U-Haul by going direct to seller, right? That's not the avatar we're looking for. But any property 50,000 square feet and less, it could be anywhere from, a couple $100,000 on up to $2 or $3 million, even $4 million properties can be mom and pop properties. And our best success really is direct to seller. I hesitate to say, hey, you got to get on the phone and call them, or hey, you got to direct mail, because both of those avenues work. It really comes down to whether you want to deploy a rifle or a shotgun, right? Direct mail is the shotgun. You just spend thousands of dollars to send mail all over the country and have those sellers call you, which is a great position to be in, but it does cost money. And you might spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 before you get a deal. So in that case, if you have more money than time, direct mail is a great place to start. If you have more time than money, I really like the strategy of calling owners directly. The question becomes, who do you call? And I've developed what I think is a very efficient system for identifying properties with the highest probability of turning into a deal. And we use basically Google Maps to isolate properties in specific geographic areas based on the individual buyer, their criteria, what they're hoping to do, whether they want to manage remotely or locally to them on their first deal. But we pick an area and then we use Google Maps to build our own list of sellers. And then we just start calling them. And it sounds like a lot, but I'll tell you, Ian, him, Jason, you do as well. I think Chris Michaels, he did exactly what we outline in our courses and our systems. He built a list of 300 owners and just started calling them. He wholesaled 2 deals within like the first, 6 or 9 months, whatever it was. And then his third deal, he and I ended up buying together. We partnered on it because it was too good a deal. I wouldn't let him wholesale it. I'm like, dude, you can wholesale that for $50,000, or we can make $1 million. What do you want to do? And that was only building a list of 300 sellers and then just calling them. And you think about it, you call 10 people a day for 30 days, you'll have talked to all 300. And the odds that you get at least some traction within that 30 days, you're not going to close on a deal that quickly, but that you'll get traction and be chasing leads and have momentum on your side are very, very high. The challenge is getting folks to believe that it can be that simple.
Yeah, and there's a few things that I want to bring up that you brought up, but the three of us could talk all day and go at it. But I see Jeff Herda in the back, and I want to bring him on for a few questions. But when we come back, I want to talk about how single family or prior real estate experience is needed or not needed to do deals. And I think that's important for a lot of people that want to do 101. But Jeff has given us his time, so I want to add him in. Jeff Herda, what's going on, brother? We have you on the Real Estate Reserve podcast. If you want to go ahead and ask your question about storage.
I guess right now the big thing going through my mind is how best to look at, self-storage deals as a wholesale. I mean, right now we just got back from Elko, Nevada for a property that we did put an offer in, but it was less than what the seller wanted. Had basically almost double the value for upside, but it needed a lot of work to start with. I mean, the one building set we're guessing it was built in the 50s, and main support beam needed to be replaced in one corner unit that we could see. Building was sinking in spots, so the sill plates needed to be replaced. All the siding was, we assume, gone because of what he did for cover up. So we're trying to figure out is like, should we have taken his asking price on that one because of such a large potential upside to find somebody to wholesale to?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff, and I appreciate it. I will tell you how I think about it, and it's not a direct response to your question on that deal, of course, because I haven't seen it and I don't know anything other than what you shared about it. But right now, given the current economic conditions, I always say we don't allow the greater economy or where we are in the storage cycle to determine if we invest, but we should allow it to at least color how we invest. Now, wholesaling is a little different story because you're depending on how you structure it. And obviously we want to always act with integrity toward the people we're buying from. But you may or may you have, it's quite likely you can structure that to have considerably less risk and exposure. And so you might be able to offer him more on the hopes that you can find somebody else to buy it. And so what I'm about to say may apply a little less. But generally speaking, as traditionally a buyer of storage, knowing what I know about today's market, I'm not going to be stretching to kind of cram deals into my buy box, right? I know over the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be more and more and more opportunities and better and better and better opportunities. At least I shouldn't say I know. That's my belief and my thesis. And so if somebody's not truly motivated and they want way more than their property is worth, I'm probably going to pass on it. Now, hopefully what I'm about to say is more directly valuable to you, Jeff. And that is when we're talking about how do I value a property that has a huge value add component? It's a great question because it's like, well, if I run the numbers and I look at this property based on the income and expenses today, it's only worth 200 grand. But if it was run right, it could be worth 800 grand. Well, I don't want to pay the seller for work he hasn't done yet on one hand, but on the other hand, I'd like to buy the opportunity to increase it in value. So what I always do is I start with the stabilized, a conservative, but realistic projected stabilized value. So that's the, let's say it's 800K this property is going to be worth. And it's worth 200K, but he wants 500K for it. Well, I'm going to take the 800 and go, well, it needs 100 grand to work. So now I'm down to 700. And if I'm going to do all the invest the money, the time, energy, I'm not going to do that for less than 300 grand. So 100 grand in work, 300 grand in what I describe as my requisite profits. These are the profits I must get in order for the deal to be worth it to me. So stabilized value of 800K minus 100 grand in repairs, minus 300K in requisite profits. Now I know my max offer is 400K. Am I willing to pay him 400K for a property that's worth only 200 as it sits? Well, yeah, we just determined I was because I only needed that 300 grand in profit. If I looked at that deal and it was like, ooh, I don't know if it's going to play out this way, then I might need more than 300 grand to compensate me for the additional risk. On the flip side, if I look at that deal and go, this is an easy lift. I mean, yeah, it needs a new support beam and it needs this and that, but I know how to do all that stuff. And the market is hot. There's no doubt I'm going to fill it up once it's fixed. Well, then maybe I don't need the full 300 grand in profits to move me forward to the deal. And I can pay the seller a little extra. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to think like the situation here. And I don't know how much time we have allotted here. So I do apologize if I just stop me if I'm going down the wrong way. But we figured out the current as-is value for the property was about 780, 790. He was asking 675 for it. Roughly looking at all the work, my business partner and I, we kind of were guessing between low side 150 between the two locations to as much, maybe over 200,000. Property we figure is worth conservatively because of the area, even being, call it 25% below what the market was showing, was putting it like 1.2. But trying to figure like our wholesale fee into it, like call it, I round up to 800, like in your case, take $200,000 and 600. I took 50 off for our wholesale fee. So that was where our offer was put into play. And we got passed over because we were the first ones in line. You had multiple people off market that were willing to buy it that were next. And just trying to review how well we did or didn't do in getting this under contract?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. To me, based on what you shared, I feel like you approached it the right way. It seems a little skinny. I don't know where else you're going to go to extract profits out of that deal.
Mhm.
Does it mean it's impossible? No, not necessarily. But like I said, I don't think you want to force deals right now. And I love that you want to learn everything you can from the quote unquote failure, right? From not getting the deal. And it's also just a numbers game. You're not going to, if you're getting every deal, if you're winning every offer you make, you're offering too much, right? You should be getting passed over for others because you don't want to buy every deal you offer on. You want to buy only the deals where they accept your most aggressive offers because those are the ones that have the most profit for you. But I mean, just quick numbers. You said he's asking 675 and 200K in repairs. That's 875. Call it 900K after closing costs. You're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who's willing to pay you 50K on top of the 900K in order to get a property that's worth 1.2 when you're done. There's only $250,000 of value there on a $1.2 million property. That's what, a 25% margin.
Yeah.
And they have to take it from what it is today, do 200 grand in work, negative cash flow, hope that it fills up when they're done, all for 200 and 250K. I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is the property was 96% occupied. So they had that going for them, and their rates I felt were extremely low just to keep their work down, for what they had to do. Cause he's just burnt out from doing too much work for too many years. I mean, retirement age, as most of the people running these.
And I would stop you there, just because, not because we don't have more time, but it's like, hey man, if it is 96% full and it's only going to be worth $1.2 million afterwards, that means the NOI is not following the true value. You can't drive rates high enough to achieve the value that you're trying to achieve, right? It's a metric based on the NOI that you have. So, sorry, Wags, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It hit me. Is that if you could get the NOI to the point where it's worth 1.8 million, well, then that would make intrinsic sense to me. So it's just really a function of your underwriting overall. But we appreciate your question. Hopefully that helped, and hopefully we can explore deeper and go from there, man. So appreciate you coming on.
No, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
hey,
man.
Hey, Mike, the majority of your students, the stuff that you're involved in, are most of these either wholesale or after stabilized or I guess the word stabilized, right? You're flipping to somebody else, or long-term holds. Is it one of those three?
Yes, it's actually two of those three, I would say. Generally speaking, and we have some students who wholesale the crap out of deals. I've got two guys who have made between $500,000 and $1 million just in wholesale fees in the last 12 to 30 months, depending on which guy I'm talking about.
It's every year for the past 3 years, right? We got them guys grinded out.
Right. It's crazy. And so there's absolutely money to be made there. It's also a great strategy for just getting started because it eliminates I don't know how to run a deal. I don't have the money to buy a deal. It's like, well, then just wholesale them and you can make 50 to 100 grand a pop. And so it's a great way to get started. I do shy away from that as a long-term strategy because it's transactional. You do it once, you get paid once. You want to get paid again, you got to do it again. And, we use the tagline, using ordinary garages to create extraordinary lives. Doing wholesale transactions for the rest of my life doesn't sound like an extraordinary life to me. And so I don't use that. I use that as a secondary or ancillary income stream to maybe capitalize on a deal that doesn't fit my buy criteria. Directly. Sorry, I'll just finish up real quick here, Ian. As far as buy and fix and kind of stabilize and flip it, or buy and hold for cash flow, I actually encourage all of my students to approach every deal where either of those scenarios, they find the deals and structure those deals in such a way where either of those two scenarios feels like a victory. That way they have two separate paths to victory as opposed to one, right? If you buy a deal with the intention of flipping it in 24 months and then the market changes or something doesn't go quite according to plan and you're stuck owning it, you want to be happy that you still own it. You don't want to be the storage version of an accidental landlord who tried to flip a house, couldn't sell it because the market turned. Now he's a landlord and doesn't know what the hell he's doing and hates the thing, right? So we want to be prepared and only do deals that if we can't sell them to extract our equity. And just so your listeners know, our goal is to always double or triple the value of a property in 2 to 4 years. And if we do that, great. And then once we've done that, we can either keep it for the cash flow, or we can sell it, extract the equity, and then rinse and repeat if we have the appetite to do it again.
Yeah, and then those sometimes become tighter, some of those metrics, but it's a good general metric, and a lot of people trip over some of this, and they get too inundated with like, Mike said I got to do this, or Ian's doing that, right? Like in the end, you got to know what you want to do. And I want to go back to like what we were talking about. You say extraordinary life with ordinary garages, and a lot of people are like, oh, fuck it, it's just storage, it's super easy. And you got the other side of people like, yo, this is a business. How much of like, and that's why I think where people get scared. Some people take a passive route. Some people take a super active route, right? We're completely different in some of these things. With that being said, like how much experience did you have, or how much experience does someone need to even be able to do a commercial transaction? And I'd actually ask Jason your opinion on this too, because as a lender on some of these deals, what are you seeing as an experience need? So Mike, you want to go?
Yeah, it's a great question. And no doubt about it, having experience helps. It helps make the banks comfortable. It helps give sellers confidence that you're going to be able to do what you're going to do, or you say you're going to do, and all of those things. So I'm not discounting the value of experience. And I'd encourage anybody who always had storage experience to raise their hand, right? Like, Ian, there was a point where you had zero storage experience, and now you own 700,000 square feet of this stuff, right? There was a point at which I had zero experience, and then I bought my first one. And from that day forward, I could lean on the fact that I have experience. So there's definitely value in it. But I think success comes to those people willing to step out in faith and kind of feel around into the unknown. And as the old cliche goes, fail forward. That's actually, and Ian, you know this, that's one of the reasons I created the coaching program. Our highest level coaching program is a partnership program. So for people that don't have experience, but they have the desire, they're committed to doing it, and they pass all our vetting processes, what they essentially are buying is not only our expertise, but also a partner with experience. So when the bank or the lender says, hey, it looks like a decent deal, but who are you to think you know how to run storage? You're a X, Y, or Z. You're just a physical therapist, or just a so-and-so, just a single family guy, not a storage guy. It gives that person extra ammo to say, hey, you're absolutely right. And that's why I wouldn't do this alone. That's why I partnered with Mike in the Storage Rebellion, and we're doing it this way. The other thing I'll say just very quickly is I want to encourage everybody to not discount the value of the non-storage experience that they have, right? So the bank, my first loan, I got turned down 5 times before I got a yes. And just so you guys know, this is a property that went from $330K to 1.8 million over 6-7 years. 5 banks didn't want to play, right? The 6th, and each time they said no, I said, okay, could you please tell me why? And a lot of it was, hey, you don't have the experience. And so over time, I crafted a response that gave them the confidence that I knew what I was doing. And a lot of times we think that the banker knows everything about the industry, and oftentimes we know as much or more. It's just a matter of establishing ourselves as an expert. And so talking about the income to expense ratio, and hey, if I can survive in the single family world for the last 5 years with a 55% income to expense ratio and do pretty darn well, I know there are differences in storage. Here's the biggest ones that I've learned about and I plan to address in my operations. But I'm starting with an industry standard of 35 cents income to expense ratio. So I've got that buffer. And once you start to talk with that kind of conviction and confidence, bankers' no's start to turn into yeses. And to your point, Ian, it gets easier the more times you've done it.
Yeah, and then sometimes it gets too easy, and then you're like, oh yeah, just do this, and then you actually get kicked in the face, right? Like, everybody needs to be humbled once in a while, and it doesn't matter how big or small your portfolio, what your experience level is, and this is why we all go to events. This is why I attend your events, whether it's a newbie or an experienced event. That's why we all go to these things, and that's why you host the events. That's why you have the network, because we're all in this together, right? And like, to have a community around you. Storage is goofy, but then on top of that, like storage isn't like the sexiest asset class in the world in everybody's eyes. And then on top of that, you're a real estate investor or a business owner, and then people are like, well, I really don't resonate with you. So then you're standing out on an island, and that's what I like about your group, and being able to communicate with other storage investors, because your investment thesis is completely different than mine. But yet we share experiences with each other. I was like, hey, man, I think going third party might be a great opportunity for certain situations. You never in a million years said you would do it. And at a few of our private events that we had together, one of the masterminds or one of the events, you're like, yo, dude, I think I'm going to chew on this. And then you went and executed that. But yet we have completely different investment models where we're able to share those experiences. So yeah, man, it's powerful. That's why you need to be a part of something. That's why you want to be in certain groups, and that's why you want to attend events and just get in the game, even if you're not doing a deal. Everyone provides value of some sort. Just because you might have more money than you know what to do with, so therefore you might be a great financier to somebody, and you might have no money, but you're a grinder. Shane Chapin from your group, not to say he doesn't have any money, but he was a grinder. He went out and used his skill set to build relationships to grow a badass storage portfolio, right? So there's a ton of opportunity, no matter what your skill set is, for people to integrate and operate together. So
yeah. 100%. I always say that, every storage deal has somewhere between 8 and 20 pieces, right? It's an 8 to 20 piece puzzle, depending on the deal. And it's very rare for one individual to show up with all 8 pieces, right? And so if maybe I have the deal and the expertise, but maybe I'm not willing to put in the sweat equity, and somebody else has the money, the three of us can collaborate in a way where we get the deal done together when none of us by ourselves would have had the power to get it done.
Yeah, and one thing to add is entrepreneurship is somewhat of a lonely business. Real estate investing, to be layered on that, is somewhat of a lonely business. The one, in general, some folks have business partners, some don't, and there's so many parties that are involved in each transaction, right? You don't have the person finding the deal or the operator, but you got some sort of capital partner, you got additional vendors, you need to understand the know-how and the resources to execute on some of these deals. So you're layering all that into real estate investing. Typically, if you're in the single family space or kind of in a smaller scale space, you start kind of in your hometown, but a lot of storage in general might not necessarily be in your hometown. It might need facilities all over the country. So what Ian said related to, networking with people, you can't do this stuff alone, right? In general, you can't really do anything alone. If you think you can, you're a fool, and it'll take you years and years and years and years and years to do so, instead of fast tracking it. And I know, Mike, you got an event coming up here soon in Dallas, and I want to talk about that a little bit, just to share that with everybody who's listening or viewing, and maybe I can actually bring that up here. I'll bring that up here on the screen as well. Tell us a little bit about that. That's the Storage Rebel Summit.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate you asking. I'm super excited about it. So we've been hosting live events for like the last, Ian, 3.5 years or so. Ian's been at every single one of them. He's actually spoken at the last several. He'll be speaking at the one in January. It's January 12th to 14th down in Dallas. And it's the first event that is open to the public. Previously, to get into the events, the mastermind events that we host, it's literally tens of thousands of dollars to join for a year and then participate in those events. And my highest loyalty, of course, has always been to those folks. And I love hosting for that group. But the part that always felt a little off to me is like that neglected the newer investor, the person who was interested and excited about storage, but really at the early stages of their journey. Like, you don't enter our mastermind community and pay $8,000 and $600 a month to figure out how to do this storage thing. Like, you join that after you've already figured it out and you want to take it to the next level. And so this event was my response to that, is trying to kind of get back to the roots and share the power that storage has, and kind of open it up to a wider audience and allow people that maybe don't have any real estate experience, or they have real estate experience in other asset classes, to dip their toes into the world of storage. We're going to run through everything that you need to know in order to start finding deals and making offers, right? Obviously, we can't teach everything there is to know about storage in a weekend, because let's be honest, I still don't know everything that there is to know about storage, nor does Ian, right? But we're going to talk about finding deals, analyzing deals, how to evaluate the deals. We're going to talk about creative financing, conventional financing, operations, how to get tenants, like everything you need to know to get started in this industry, we're going to cover. And I think most importantly, and maybe Ian can speak to this, and I hope I don't sound immodest as I say this, I think we run events in a way that is quite different from just about anybody else certainly on the storage side, but almost in real estate education in general. We are not a kind of speak at you from the stage educational experience. We believe very strongly in active learning. And so our events are not, hey, we'll talk at you from 8 hours and then we'll do a happy hour afterwards and it'll be a little awkward, but some of the extroverts will get some value out of it kind of thing, right? Like we curate an experience that allows everybody to feel safe and secure and confident with where they are on their journey, and ask the questions of myself, the other leaders in the group like Ian and our speakers and our sponsors, but also of each other, because there's a lot of collective wisdom within the group and the audience that we allow to intermix. And not only does it enhance the learning, but I know for me personally, it makes it far more enjoyable. I leave these events going, well, that didn't feel like work. That felt like magic. And so that just gives you a little behind the scenes into what we're trying to create as we do it. And again, it's January 12th to 14th down in Dallas. We've got tickets. A limited number of tickets left. I'm guessing we're going to sell out by the 1st of January, just based on, our current trajectory. So if anyone's interested, has questions, I'm happy to answer those questions and would love to see any of your audience there and get to shake their hands and connect in real life.
Yeah, and I'll be there speaking about underwriting specifically, which is always a fun topic, which we were just discussing. But what I want to do, since we are talking about the event, I'm trying to add in Spear. I think I got you. And I want to add in Nick Paul, who's also going to be speaking at the event. And I just want to kind of give like a mini show to like what this is going to be, because I saw Fred, don't let me butcher your name, Fred Faulting. Is there a boom in storage? And if so, why? And guys, you're going to get like a first-hand experience of literally what happens at these events, not only from a 101 standpoint, but at the SRI level and above, of like how we all work together on this and how we all have different theses. So I want to welcome Nick Paul and Scott Spear. I know they were on here to ask questions, but I'm calling them out. And going to ask them to provide value to everybody in the room, because that's what Mike usually wants people to do. So, I mean, Nick, you want to go first? What do you think? Is there still a boom going on in the storage industry?
I guess kind of define boom. I think
boom, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think storage is a hot asset class. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So in terms of there still being a boom, absolutely. I mean, there's people still going after storage left and right, more people coming in every day. I think that more people are becoming aware of it, honestly, because of people like Mike and you and Jason that talk about this in areas that people get to receive that information. So, it's not booming to me in the sense right now. There's still good deals being done and people still achieving good sales prices, but not like there were 6 months ago. So,
well, and what Nick's holding back, Nick, now I think about it, I don't think we've ever had you on the Real Estate Reserve podcast, so we're booking you immediately after this. But Nick's out in New Mexico and he invests specifically in his backyard, right? Mike, myself, Scott, we all invest outside of our backyard. So the opportunity and the boom might be different in southeast New Mexico compared to what we see when we're looking in other jurisdictions all across the United States. Spear, what do you think? Do you think there's a boom in the storage industry? We know you are Mr. in everyone put deals together. So what do you got, my man?
Yeah, I think there's still a boom there. The boom has become maybe less of a boom. A lot more people are into it. A lot more people are in this asset class looking for deals, and there's some real strong marketers getting into the business stuff. So it's made it a little tighter. It's not like it was when Wagner started. It was easy. Wagner, man, you just show up, you pay $200 for a place, you sell it for $1.5 million. 3 years later. those booms might be gone. But just give you an idea, we're closing on one on the 29th of December. I was just working out just a little bit ago, and we're picking it up for $800,000, getting owner financing on half of it. Believe in about 3 years, going to be worth about 1.6. And that's just with going in and bringing things up to market rates. You just got to be looking for those mom and pop deals, and just don't be afraid to go talk to people. You're going to be surprised what some people are willing to sell their properties for, and everybody wins. People are getting what they want for the property. You're winning because you're taking on a good asset. And I think there's still a boom. It's just there's not as many deals as there used to be. So you just got to work a little harder. You got to hustle some more. And I like the Nick Paul model. You kind of work in your backyard and you branch out from there and you network from there, and you marry Miss New Mexico and life is good. So
I was just about to say, Serena, thank you for being the biggest fan on here. She fully supports Nick and all of us when we go to these events. So we appreciate you. Mike, let's go to Mike. What do you think about the storage boom?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think both guys answered it well. My maybe cautionary tale on the question in general is be careful not to fall into right when I hear boom, I think like industry wide, like storage is booming and this is the national trends. Storage, more than any other asset on the planet, is a micro market asset. So like, while it may not be booming in California, it might in Southeast New Mexico, or it might in Dillon, South Carolina. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands of pockets within the United States that are ripe for storage to continue to boom for the foreseeable future. And there are also pockets in America where I probably wouldn't want to buy right now because it's not the boom. Maybe they're oversaturated, they got overbuilt, whatever the case may be. But this is why we always say, we don't allow boom or bust cycles to determine if we invest, because quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to know when they're going to boom and when they're going to bust exactly. But what I can do is adjust the way I invest, either the specific market or the type of deal or the deal structure that I'm putting together in such a way to create the boom. I don't care what the rest of the market's doing. If my property booms, I'm good, right? And so that's just my caution. Don't get too hung up on the national trends.
Mike, do you think let's talk about next steps and getting started for somebody who's interested in, wants to get into storage. The event that you're doing, this upcoming event, you said it was for newer investors. Do you think that's going to be the majority of the topics that you're outlining, or do you think somebody who has a few facilities under management and they're looking to expand, will they still benefit from that?
Yeah, great question. And so the content, I'm going to speak in two different realms here. The content, the education that we're offering is designed toward newer investors. I would say from 0 to 1 deal, like we're going to teach you the things to go from not owning, the things you need to know in order to own a facility, or maybe from 1 deal to 2. Maybe it's 1 deal, but I do it all myself and it's in my backyard. We're going to teach you the remote management strategies that would allow you to expand your horizons and buy all over the country and maybe increase the opportunities you have that way. That's the content. Is there still value for more advanced investors? Absolutely. And the 3 guys on the call with me here are going to be there, as well as several of our highest level master's students and other insiders who won't necessarily be speaking at the event, but they're coming just to attend. And the reason they're coming is because they understand the value of relationships and networking. And some of them are like, listen, the way I got to take my business to the next level is by teaming up with people who are hungry and willing to do the stuff that I'm either not willing to do or not good at, right? And so maybe that's meeting up with a new investor who doesn't have the money, but is willing to go find deals. Well, if they find the deals and the more experienced investor can fund them and they can find a way to collaborate in some sort of mutually beneficial way, then who cares if the content was maybe a review for them? The other thing I often say is that as valuable as it is to learn new things, it's also just as valuable to be reminded of what's true. So yes, we want to learn new things, but putting ourselves in situations where we can be reminded of what's true and what's always been true and what we actually knew until we forgot about it, like that's just as valuable too. And so for those reasons, I think anybody who's serious about using storage to change their financial standing in life has a reason to attend this event.
Got it. I got one more question for all you folks, and I'll let you go. Actually, Mike, we have 2 questions for you, but 1 question for everybody else, including Ian. If you were to start over today, what would be kind of the first step that you would take? Like if you rewound however long you guys have been in this business, a few years, 10 years, whatever it is, like knowing what you know now, like how would you kind of rewind and start over from scratch? Scott, if you want to go first, go ahead.
I'll just pop in real quick because I'm more interested to hear what these guys have to say. For me, it would be kind of rejecting this idea that I've got to do this in order to do that, Like I had to do a single family house before I was qualified to do a 4-family house before I was felt qualified to do a commercial asset like storage. And I hear new investors talk about that all the time where, well, I'm going to get my start and kind of sharpen my teeth over here in residential, but I really want to do storage. If I could do it all over again, I would just go straight to storage and I would get past the limiting beliefs that contribute to me thinking I got to play small in order to earn my right to play big. Like, let's just play big from the start.
I love that.
Scott, what do you got? What would you suggest to a new investor?
I would suggest that I would have purchased the properties that I wholesaled out when I was early on in the business. You know what we're selling those things for now and what they're selling for, I would have kept those. And Mike brings up a good point. If I were starting over, this is like the perfect event to go to. And I actually believe that. And our kids are coming. Our son is 31, our daughter's 29. They've been expressing interest in self-storage. I told them this is the event you want to go to if you want to learn about self-storage. I totally agree with Mike. The funny story, Mike's last residential rental was my first residential rental. Mike was selling that. I was getting in residential. I'm like, why are you going? What are you doing? He told me he's going to his storage. I said, oh, that's cute. Have fun. But after a few years of watching what Mike was doing and how hard he was not working and how hard I was working, I said, okay, I got to sit down with Wags and see what he's really up to. And I would have went to storage instead of cutting my teeth.
Yeah, now both of you are in an RV traveling the country. So Scott, we appreciate you. Thanks for coming on. See you in a few weeks in Dallas. And I know you'll bring a ton of value. Looking forward to meeting the whole family there and hopefully being able to deliver value. So we appreciate you. Nick, yours has already been answered for you. But if you're not going to listen to your wife, what would be something that you would tell new investors to do? Or what would you suggest to them, or what a learning lesson that you would pass on to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing that I would pass on is just don't just get in and take action. Honestly, when I think back to when I started trying to figure out what the self-storage asset class was, I probably spent 6, 7, maybe 8 months researching, looking into stuff, trying to understand it before really pulling the trigger and going all in. And I think that was a lot of time wasted where, my questions may have been partially answered, but until you do it, you don't know. And so having the right resources, number one, to help guide you, and then just doing it is the way that's going to get you to where you want to go the fastest. You can sit there and just think that you need to learn more and you're going to be in the same place looking back, the time lost. So
awesome.
Yeah, man, definitely appreciate that. Makes sense. And honestly, I look forward to seeing you out there. For once, you're finally the closest person to the event. You probably got the shortest travel time. So Mike owes you a beer, or maybe you owe Mike a beer. And if Mike's not going to drink your beer, I'll drink it for him. Guys, if you're going to the event, me and Nick most likely will be leading the after parties. Just let you guys know now. So Nick, we appreciate you in answering that question.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like obligated to answer this question, and you guys know that I love to talk, but it kind of goes back to what Nick was saying is don't put it up on a pedestal. And I think Mike, I vaguely remember in Charlotte, you're like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you overthinking this? And I was just like, well, this metric or that metric and this thing and that thing. And I don't get it. And how the hell do you do this? And you're like, yo, bro, you own all these houses. How'd you do it before? You swung the bat. You took a leap of faith. You grew balls. You just did it, right? And Nick and Scott were both saying something similar: is get out there and swing the bat and go do it. And Mike, you said it earlier in the podcast, is fail forward. If you don't take that step or that leap of faith, you're never going to do anything. You're going to end up in your firefighting job for 35 years and your pension's going to go bankrupt. You're going to end up being a physical therapist for the rest of your life, being miserable, moving granny's knee every day at work in a cold, snowy place, Mike Wagner, or you're going to be a mortgage broker for the rest of your life, right? Like Jason would not have what he has today had he never taken that leap of faith. And I think that's a commonality among all entrepreneurs. And if you're scared, find an accountability partner, go to an event, find out that other people are scared the same way you are scared, right? Like just going to Dallas, even if you've read everything up on what Mike has told you to do and you're still scared to do it, you'll be in a room full of 100 other people or however many people you have, I don't even know, 50 other people that are scared to go do it. And someone in there is going to be like, yo, Mike, thanks for telling me what you told me to do. And boom, you're going to go do it. And someone's going to resonate with you and click and hopefully move you forward in that situation. So that's why I'm excited for the event. And that's what I would tell my earlier self, not only in single family, but in storage or commercial or anything in general. So, Mike, dude, before we let you go, and someone actually brought this up, it's funny that someone did this. There you go. Is what book or podcast you're studious? I give you guys, you'll find out Mike spends a lot of time working on himself, and we're not talking about his hair. Is you spend a lot of time working on yourself and growing your mind. And me and Mike are probably the most. You would never guess it, but we're both hippies, more or less. And that's how we bond. But what book or podcast are you reading to or listening to right now that you would suggest to someone that could help them overcome whatever it is in business or life?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right now I'm reading The Greatest Salesman on Earth by Og Mandino. It's an old school personal development book. It takes 10 months to read it because it's filled with 10 3 or 4 page scrolls. And you have to read each scroll 3 times a day, the last time being out loud to yourself. It's kind of a self-hypnosis / affirmation process, but in the form of this book. And it's sold, 5 or 10 million copies. Like it's a really famous book. And so I'm reading that. And because it's only 3 pages 3 times a day, the other one that I'm currently working on is actually, I finished it, but it is Conscious Capitalism, which is essentially dispenses with the idea that making money is somehow bad, right? Which, you see the corruption of Coca-Cola and blah, blah, blah. And our culture would have us believe that if you get rich, you're somehow evil. And this book, Conscious Capitalism, is all about, it's very much a modern day and far less novel version of Atlas Shrugged, right? It's like we do good by doing good for ourselves and by becoming producers. And it outlines the tenets by which a company can be a conscious capitalistic company, which is what I'm trying to design the Storage Rebellion to be.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And coincidentally, at the last event, I gave everybody a copy of Atlas Shrugged because it is true. Too many people get hung up on trying to make money and no, it's not right. No, it's not wrong. And I think you're transparent enough that you struggled on it sometimes. And I would fight you. I'm like, Mike, what are you doing? Come on, man. Like you're here, right? Like, and we would talk about that because again, our personalities are just different enough to look at each other and say, man, like you're right there. Like, let's do it. Go get the big nut. Let's go, man. But again, this is why we're all part of groups. This is why you host us. This is why I host my event. This is why Jason brings, he has an event for guys to deploy private capital in the proper manner all across this country. This is why we're all surrounded by the right groups. So, I'm really looking forward to Dallas and, Jason, I don't know if you want to pop it up there, but there's been a few comments coming in. Here's the event again, Storage Rebel Summit 23. I'll let Mike talk here in a second, but if you guys got great value out of this in person, I'm a little more fun if you can actually imagine that. And Mike's even more fun in person if he's not making you do yoga. But Mike, if you just want to give one more shout out to the event, when and where it's going to be, and we'll close out from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, it's January 12th to 14th, and we've set it up to try to make it approachable for folks. We've discounted the price heavily. You can see there on the screen, or if you visit the link. And on top of that, we've set it up so we're going to start later in the day on the 12th, giving people hopefully the morning of the 12th to travel into Dallas. We're going to get started at 4:00. We're going to obviously do our opening ceremonies and then have dinner together, kind of break some bread, get to know each other in a meaningful way, and set the foundation for the next 2 days. And we're going to spend the 13th and 14th in the classroom, 8:30 to 4:30. Each day, I'm sure there will be impromptu dinner outings, happy hours, and fire pits. If you don't know the inside jokes there, just show up and you'll learn. We have a track record of having a lot of fun late into the night. And so really that's it, man. I hope to see, I would love to see some of your audience here and have people come up and tell me, hey, I'm only here because I heard you with the Hard Money guys and that loudmouth Ian on the 21st of December.
Yeah, and I will say, just so you guys know, I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I recently moved back to Philadelphia, so if you are too, it is okay. We're allowed to travel to Dallas. I told Mike I don't know if I can go because of this exact reason, and he said it would be okay. So I am traveling to Dallas. God, don't even get me started. A little bit of agita, but I will be there, and it's going to be a great time. If you guys need any more information, feel free to reach out to myself or Jason. Mike, if you want to let everybody know, how can they find you? Where can they find your group? What's your Facebook group? I think most people know where to find you on the internet, but for those that don't, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, storagerebels.com is probably the best place. That's our private community. It's a free community to join. You can jump in and poke around before you buy your ticket for January if you're so inclined. And I'm very active in there, private messages and in the forums. I think that's probably the best place. Also, if they want to see more about the company, the Storage Rebellion, thestoragerebellion.com is a place where there's more information as well.
Yeah, man, we appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing you down in Dallas. I guess we are coming up on Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever holiday you celebrate. So everybody enjoy their holidays. And again, man, we appreciate you. I think this is a great opportunity for people to kick off 2023 and set their tone right for what's going on going forward. So
thanks again, Mike. Certainly appreciate your time.
Yeah, Jason, thank you. Ian, thanks, brother.
Absolutely. See you soon, buddy.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.